My name is Mike, and this is my parkour journey. Hey everyone, welcome back. I wasn't sure if this was the right time to record and post this video with everything that's going on in the world right now. Current events have kind of left me a little heavy-hearted, and but I definitely needed a distraction, so hopefully for the few people that this reaches, that it can distract you as well. This video is a departure from my previous videos, which documents my journey and my process. So during some training sessions, I was learning some new skills. It got me thinking about my process. Then I wondered how other people train. So when I first started, I either would see something on YouTube or on watching American Ninja Warrior, and I say, hey, something I can try in the gym. I feel like I'm a decently athletic person, and the simpler skills that I tried came fairly easily, but didn't have any formal parkour instruction, so I just basically was winging it, asking questions about technique with whatever coaches or athletes that were around, and learning that way. So this was okay to begin with, but as I progressed to harder challenges, this way of training that definitely wasn't going to cut it. So I got into creating safer progressions on the harder skills, where I would take a challenge and then start smaller and lower, because definitely height affected my brain more than a lot of the other things, and just work my way up. Using mats wherever I could go, whereas making it the most safe as possible. And this would generally get me almost all the way there, 85-90% of the way there, but something usually held me back, and it was usually this thing up here. My brain would take over, slam on the brakes saying, whoa, what are you doing? Being in my late 40s, my body has so many aches and pains, and it takes forever to heal from any injuries. So I realized my mental capacity was so much lower than what my physical capacity was, and I really need to up my mental game. So over the last little while, I've been working hard to increase my mental capacity, but I've definitely got a long ways to go. While thinking about all of this, I wondered if other people, if people practicing parkour had similar experiences, or if they had completely, vastly different views and ways to train. So I wondered if it was vastly different, what made it different for them? Was it, is it depending on age, your skill level, past experiences? So I came up with a few questions, and I sought out some parkour practitioners ranging from newcomers, coaches, high-level parkour athletes, all the way to professional stunt women. The age ranges also were from, starting from as young as 17 all the way up to a 65-year-old. So before I get into the video, I want to say sorry for everyone who took the time to answer my questions. I was supposed to have this video out last year, but between hitting some creative walls, family getting sick with COVID, stopping and starting so many times, I didn't know if it was ever going to get done. But don't want to make any excuses, so onwards and upwards. So during my parkour journey, I've been really fortunate to have met, interacted, and trained with some really amazing individuals. Because everyone's been so welcoming, I was able to ask a lot of people from very diverse backgrounds to help with this video. So the questions that I asked them were, when you reach something beyond your physical capabilities, what's your process in conquering that? And then I asked the same question, but if it was something beyond their mental capabilities. And then getting into parkour, what was their first big challenge, and what's their current biggest challenge that they're dealing with right now? Does it get any easier? And also, why do they keep doing it? So for everyone who took the time to answer me, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So most people, when I asked them these questions, they wrote down their answers and either sent them back to me via Instagram or Facebook. I wasn't sure the best way to share those answers, so I'll do the best I can to summarize their answers, and I'm going to leave a link in the description below to a Word document that will have everyone's original unedited answers. So here we go in no particular order. Katie McDonnell is one of my favorite parkour athletes to follow, and that's mainly due to her personality. I love just how she approaches her training. She's 30 years old, and she's trained for the past 12 years as a free runner. She was a contestant on Ninja Warrior UK, and probably most well known for her work as a stunt performer. She's starred in Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, Wonder Woman 1984, and The Eternals. Katie graciously took the time out of her busy schedule to answer my questions, which I'm really grateful for.
So I'm going to attempt to answer these questions one at a time in voice notes. So the first one about how I approach something that's physically beyond my capabilities. So I guess it depends how far beyond my capabilities they are. Usually I would work on the individual components. So say, for example, if it was a long line and I wasn't physically able to put it together yet, I would work on, say, the beginning section, then the middle section, and then the end section. Or if it's one particular move, I might work on, say, the takeoff, and then I might work on the rotation element by doing different exercises to help with that. But basically, I would break things down into their physical components. And say, for example, if it's a case of I don't physically have the strength for one aspect of it, I would then work on strength exercises that would help me physically get better at whatever it is that I need to get better at. It's a similar answer actually for mentally. Again, with something that I'm not mentally ready for yet, the best thing that I can do is to break it down into components. So say, for example, if it was a jump that is scary because it's at height, I might work on the same jump low to the ground, or I might work on a jump that's at the same height but is a much smaller jump, that sort of thing. Or let me think, what else would I do? Sometimes I do just have to walk away from something, because sometimes it's just the session itself. My brain isn't in the right frame of mind to do whatever it is. If I'm distracted with something else going on in my life, then sometimes that's just not the day for me to be trying that thing. As for getting back into parkour, my biggest challenge has definitely been the mental side of things. Everything feels very scary when you haven't done it for a while, and concrete feels 10 times harder than it used to feel. Also physically, I have had injuries that I've had to deal with. Obviously, over lockdown, I found out about my scoliosis, and that's really affected my training because I'm very acutely aware that when I feel a niggle in my back, I really, really don't want to push it, because I don't want to be in the position I was, where I was in bed for a few days, unable to get up and move around. So I'm just very aware of that now. And I also had my ankle surgery, so my ankles aren't quite as strong as they were. So physically I am behind where I was, but I think the hardest thing has been mentally getting back to where I was, because I think I'm still physically capable of, actually. It's more so that they feel a lot more scary than they were before. But that just takes time to come back, I guess. Not too worried. I think anything you keep doing regularly gets easier. Parkour definitely doesn't feel as easy for me as it did a few years ago, but with each session back, I've noticed mentally I feel a lot better in my training. So yeah, it does get easier. I think most things do, the more you do them. Why do I keep doing it? That is a very good question. Mainly, I would say that I do still really enjoy my training. Obviously, there are days where I don't enjoy my training so much, and I can get quite frustrated when things feel more difficult than they used to. But ultimately, I do still really enjoy training. I enjoy flipping. I enjoy any kind of sort of physical activities. Like, I was always the PE kid in school. Like, I was the sports captain of my junior school and secondary school. Like, that was just always my thing, being really active. So I do just love it. Also, I kind of have to keep at it because it's part of my career now. So there is sort of a bit of a pressure to keep on going, because that is my main source of income / only source of income.
Up is Erica Madrid. She's the co-founder, coach, and parkour athlete at Edge Movement in Inverness, Colorado. She's got a wealth of experience as an ex-gymnast, a Cirque du Soleil performer, a gym owner, and coach, among many other things. To my knowledge, Edge Movement was one of the first, if not the first, gym to host an over 40 age group in parkour competition. Her dad actually even competed and took home a medal, so that's pretty awesome, you know. So She's 30 years old currently. She's been training for 12 years. Erica actually followed me on Instagram after seeing one of my Parkour Over 40 posts, which made my day. Which I was super excited that someone as big as her wanted to follow me. So when Erica finds a challenge that's beyond her physical capabilities, she tries to break it down to what part she needs to work on. That could be strength-based, mobility-based, or technique-based, or a combination of any of those. Once she's figured that out, it's all about creating progressions and practicing those until she's confident to move forward. When it's something beyond her mental capabilities, she tries to isolate the part giving her the most trouble. Whether it's lacking confidence in not having drilled the technique enough, or maybe just irrational fear. She not only makes progressions for the skill itself, but for the things that can go wrong. Having the confidence to handle the mishaps is often what it takes to break that mental barrier. She goes on to say that it's important to recognize when you just need more time. Not just in time to try the challenge, but time to get stronger in training in general. Her first big challenge that she recalls was an inward flyaway lache. At the time, Erica had never seen anyone do it. Though that's not to say it hadn't been done, it's just that she had never seen anyone do it before. So it started off as a joke in her head, but then she started playing around with it, and she actually started to feel that it was possible to do it. While she was going through her progression, she said it wasn't physically difficult, but it took about 100 plus tries to get the technique down, what the best way to do it was. As for her first big mental challenge, it was her first roof gap. It actually was only about 6 feet across, but she stood on top and cried for 30 minutes before finally doing it. Erica's words of wisdom from that experience: don't do roof gaps while crying. Looking back, she feels that she probably should have prepped it in the gym first, just before attempting it on top of a roof right away. Erica feels that old challenges will get easier over time because you just obviously get better if you train, but it definitely will get harder because the challenges just get more difficult. It's also harder to continue to train, and it's common to see your abilities plateau. So it's sometimes it's hard to keep moving when you don't see yourself improving quickly as you used to. So she keeps doing the challenges because that's what makes it worthwhile. She says things that are too easy are never fun for long. Robert Leszczynski, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, aka Tall Rob. Rob is my current coach and is a program director and senior trainer at Breathe Parkour here in Calgary. He's 31 years old and he's trained for 13 years or so. I've known him since he was a trainer when he started at Breathe, and he's been my one-on-one coach for the past year or so. During our one-on-one sessions, we've actually gotten to know each other pretty well, and our favorite things, or at least my favorite thing during our sessions, is our conversations, just kind of the nerdy aspects of movement and biomechanics. The best thing that I love about training or being coached by Rob is that he's able to help me adapt my skills from my other sports such as volleyball and apply them to parkour. So Rob takes a very procedural approach when it comes to physical challenges. He likes to break them down into the fundamental parts, things like speed, power, strength, mobility, and technique. And he defines his goal as specifically as possible. So after the breakdown, that he has identified what areas he needs to work on, he plans to work on those areas. And once he starts, those individual areas have started improving, he puts it all together and rinse and repeats those areas until he can hit his final challenge. Because he's able to break it down into those small parts, those parts are able to help him manage any mental challenges that come up. Whenever he comes up on a mental challenge, he'll over drill those parts until it becomes boring, and then drill them like 100 more times after that. And then he'll kind of visualize the parts that he can't do while doing the parts he physically can do. So his biggest his starting challenge when he started parkour was just sorting through a lot of the muscle imbalances he kind of accumulated throughout the years of playing basketball and doing other sports. He definitely saw that those imbalances were especially evident when he was trying to do the power moves that he loves doing. He just didn't have the right kind of strength and mobility to do the skills that he wanted to do. So his current challenge is just trying to continue to fix those imbalances. He's made a ton of progress over the years, And even though he's at a point where he's correct in most of them, they just require a lot of maintenance to keep up. Rob says it does get easier, but therein lies the problem. When it gets too easy, it's time to increase the challenge, and that's really the main reason why he keeps doing parkour, that there's never-ending challenges to complete. Mike Theriault was one of the original instructors at Breed when my oldest actually started parkour. And he was actually the designer for both gyms here in Calgary. So he is a speed parkour guru, and he's an insane athlete. He's scholarly and intellectual. He combines his knowledge of the parkour mechanics with a pretty hardcore dedication to ensuring his body is also at the same level. So I knew when he answered my questions, I would get very in-depth answers. So I'll definitely do my best to summarize his thoughts. And if you only take the time to read one person's unedited answers, I would definitely say read Mike's, because his answers were thought-provoking and just insightful. So Mike is 27, and he's been training for just over 11 years. So when confronted with physical challenges, Mike takes the time to evaluate and assess his current abilities and how they would apply to the skill in question. Then he asks himself to determine if he's ready for it. So in his words, nothing is worse than jumping headlong into something you won't be able to do, and then injure yourself, and then take yourself out for weeks or months, and then having to start from even a worse spot. So the ability to evaluate himself comes from many years of past injuries and just knowing what his body is actually capable of. Mike states it's important to know how to evaluate your body on any given day, because some days you might feel better and there are some days you feel worse. So even knowing what your body is capable of in that day is important. A lesson he learned from Max Henry, who is another incredible athlete from Colorado, and he's the author of the Parkour Roadmap, was that your mental abilities will progress faster than your physical, because your mental game can evolve in as little as a single training session, but your strength is actually limited by your biology and it takes time for new muscle to build, let alone be honed and perfected into something you can control. This is why Mike believes that for anyone who's really serious about parkour, that they actually have a conditioning regime, and that they learn to understand their own bodies. So even though he knows his body is capable, he'll still take the time to drill out smaller challenges so that he doesn't shock his body or his system when he's trying to do a challenge. So by starting small, he's able to gauge how his body's feeling that day as well. And once he feels good, that's his green light to slowly add to the challenge until he's confident. Mike does the same evaluation with his mental fortitude. Due to his physical training with a trainer, this has allowed him to focus on the mental component of challenges without having to worry about whether his body is up for the challenge. The danger Mike finds in parkour is when your mental game is higher or greater than your physical game. This kind of leads you to bite off more than you can chew. Once Mike knows his body is ready and capable, it all comes down to drilling things repeatedly. Part of the drilling is visualizing. This allows the brain to prime the nervous system and warm it up to an idea of an action before it even takes place. So in essence, this kind of creates a playbook to follow, and this, however, isn't enough, and the mind-body connection still needs to be honed, which can only happen by constant practice and progressive increases in difficulty. So his first big physical and mental challenge was at a waterfall gap at the old Century Gardens here in Calgary. I actually couldn't find the clip of this particular jump, but Mike describes it as an awkward split foot takeoff over what was probably a 12 to 14 foot gap over a waterfall feature to a slightly slanted ledge. So the difficulty was that if you overshot, you'd take a swim, but if you undershot, you'd fall back onto sharp slanted concrete and then go for a swim. So this particular challenge gave Mike his first of many injuries that laid him up for a few weeks. He eventually was able to add this skill to his playbook, and he has that jump down to a science now. So his biggest challenge that he remembers that was at the South Gym just before it closed. It was a surfboard style precision from a 16-foot platform over a gap, which was a 12-foot drop to a ledge that was about 10 feet away. So the distance wasn't the issue, and neither was the angle. This was The biggest challenge was that this was during the time of the pandemic lockdown. So, there's so many lockdowns. So Mike wasn't able to train as much. So then he almost forgot, his body and mind forgot how to coordinate the jump, So, and at the time, and since this was the last time he could do the jump before, because the gym was going to be closed permanently, he knew that this was his last chance to ever try it. So he basically just drilled jumps for an hour, and eventually was just able to break the challenge. So Mike is constantly trying to improve and get better, so it never really gets easier because the challenges just get harder, which is part of the fun. And he says the envelope is being pushed by someone somewhere, so there's always something harder for him to work on. So he keeps training because it does keep him grounded. It reminds him that if he trains hard, he can learn to do great things, which is a lesson he'll take not only in parkour, but in life in general. And beyond personal motivations, it's the people who share the parkour mindset, which has kept him going for so long. The next guy, if there's only one word I could describe Luke, is that he's a beast. So Luke Sabal is 27 years old and has been training for 17 years. Me and the boys have had the privilege of getting some coaching sessions from Luke before he moved back to BC, and we learned a lot from him in just those few sessions. When it comes to physical barriers, Luke likes to break down the movement to find out where he needs to improve. Whether it's a long stride or a big Kong or whatever, he just pinpoints what muscle groups need improvement or strengthening, and then he works on that to gain the physical strength he needs before he even does the skill in itself. After that, it's about recreating the challenge in a way that it minimizes risk and injury. Then it's drill until the movement builds the strength needed to complete it. With mental challenge, he goes straight into risk assessment. In his words, fear is always a fear of failure. This always will result in injury, and if you're fearful, you're never going to have success. So, he breaks down the possibilities of the risk and knowing all the ways he might fail. So that way he can use mats or just drill the small parts of the whole skill. Training himself how to fail is really important because he can help eliminate any of the possibilities of injury or hurting himself, and then it's a lot easier to send. Once you learn the trustability to get over your fear, it definitely gets easier. The fear gets pushed aside, and in its place, it's excitement. Luke's answers actually surprised me a little bit. I looked at the ridiculous things that he's done and that he does do, and I figured he's sometimes I'm like, is he a human or is he a robot? During our sessions, I remember we had a discussion on progressions. I told him, I was really good at coming up with progressions, but lacked the confidence to perform the actual skill. And this is where he talked about bridging that gap between the physical and mental sides. And eventually you can just send it because you just trust that all the work you put in is there. So because of Luke, just before he moved in our last session, I definitely try to push myself more these days than I ever have, and I definitely want to thank him for that. So I met Daniel Oishi at the Breathe Parkour South Gym a few years ago. He's an amazing 17-year-old who's always made my jaw drop with his incredible flips and athleticism. He's always also been really open to train with me despite our huge age and skill gap. After watching Daniel over the years, you can see a lot of the dedication and prep work he puts into his training. So he's been training for about 6 years in parkour, and he's had about 3 years of gymnastics training as well. So when Daniel is faced with a physical challenge, he'll spend the time working through the physical task, like increasing the amount of weight he's lifting or just doing more reps. He maintains that staying patient and consistent helps remind him that the change isn't going to happen instantly, and he needs the time to build up the physical strength to accomplish the task. When he's prepping a skill or a trick that is beyond his mental capabilities, he just tries to do a skill that's somewhat similar just to get some positive vibes going. So he takes an example here while he's working on crocs, which I actually have no idea what that is, but he would just prep them until he got too scary. And then he said he then worked his way on wrap fulls because this was the closest trick to the croc, and he was getting more positive energy from fulfilling a trick, and then he was able to go back to the crocs and do that. So Daniel's first big challenge was just not letting him get ahead of himself and to learn to focus on the basics. I feel this mentality of just not getting ahead of himself makes him such a great person to train with. He's open to help out. He doesn't judge anyone. And I think we can all be that kind of person. His first big physical challenge was getting his flyaways properly. He remembers clipping his feet on the bar consistently, so he really had to get that out of his head and get over that, which was a pretty big challenge for him. He's still working on getting mentally stronger and had a few years where he struggled with being too hard on himself. He's much more zen these days and definitely makes it less scary when he doesn't get angry at himself and being too hard on himself. He can honestly say that he's just having more fun with it and can shrug off any bad landings. As to why he keeps doing it, he feels he's in a sweet spot right now, and his mental game is unlocking and his physical game is strong. So I expect nothing but awesome things from this kid for sure. The next three individuals that I'll be sharing their answers with were I met on a Facebook group called Parkour Over 40. I haven't actually had the opportunity to meet anyone in person to train with, but I'd love to actually do that sometime in the future. Jonny Lewis is a 65-year-old who joined the group sometime in 2021, but he's only done a couple of vaults that he was when he joined the stunt class. Right after that stunt class, he actually had to relocate to Idaho to write and shoot a movie. So he really just started doing parkour a few months ago. He was able to join a group of college kids that meet a few times a week to train. And since the last time we chatted, he had gone out a few times with that group and done some gymnastic classes as well. With the physical skills, Jonny tries to break it down into progressions, taking similar movements or smaller obstacles and just trying to do those skills. He definitely watches more skilled people do the skill first, asking those people questions on technique and how to do it. And only when he thinks it's doable will he actually try to attempt it. And before he even does that, he usually attempts a safe fail first. Doing the safe fail, kind of knowing what happens when it goes bad, helps him overcome his fear of falling and smashing. He's really, obviously, as with all of us, the brain takes over and is like, hey, hold up. So Jonny's first and current challenge is just motivating himself to get out and just finding the time to practice parkour. He definitely thinks it's easier because it's so much fun. It will get easier because it's so much fun. Since he's really new to parkour, every time he goes out, he starts small and he gets a sense of achievement over time, which helps him keep coming out. He will definitely try most anything that people suggest, and just being out with people and training parkour is a win in itself. Next up is a lady named Kathleen Conroy Cantrell. In her own words, she calls herself a badass mom. After watching some of her videos, I definitely would agree with that. She's 45 years old and she's been training for just over 4 years. She's pretty dedicated to parkour and improving herself, and she's up for any challenge put her way by her coach. So when she's faced with anything physical challenge, she tries to find some version of that skill within her grasp. So from there, she works her way up until she can finally hit her goal. It's really the same thing for her when it comes to mental blocks. She just builds up her confidence by doing something smaller, shorter, just to help her mental capacity. Having positive progressions will definitely help you, And then sometimes, she just has the attitude of just screw it, I'm just going to go do the skill regardless of whatever. You just got to send it. So her first challenge in parkour was mainly mental. She grew up as a musician, so rather than exercising, she spent most of her time indoors. So not coming from an athletic background, she had a lot of self-doubt and compared herself to other younger, more fit practitioners. But with the help of a very supportive coach, she's definitely quelled those doubts and quieted those voices in her head. So her current hurdle is the Kong vault, or in her own words, it's that damn Kong vault. Her body just doesn't want to commit to that movement. And one of the things that exacerbates that issue is that she doesn't actually have a gym to train in. So she's training on concrete, which makes it a little more scary to work on. You don't have soft mats to land on. So that doesn't help at all. So she still struggles with mental blocks and her physical limitations. She states that her flexibility leaves a lot to be desired. But, that just gives her more goals to set. She says, with time and training, it can definitely get easier. Looking back on her past struggles, she's definitely proud of her accomplishments. Those 6-foot jumps seem easy now that she's landing 8-foot jumps, but back then they were really hard. So there's always room for improvement, and there's always going to be some fear involved, but she finds facing those fears much easier now. Kathleen loves the feeling of moving her body in a way that is unconventional, unexpected, and ungrown up. I think this is one of the best ways I've heard someone describe parkour, especially that ungrown up part. She loves playing with her kids at the playground rather than being one of those parents that just sit and watch. This is something I completely relate to as well. I'd rather play with my kids than watch my kids play. She loves feeling strong, and she wants to be a role model for her two daughters. She also loves that her hashtag badass mom, and she loves that she has to abbreviate that hashtag since her 9-year-old hates cursing, so it's hashtag BAM for short. She loves her coaches and community, and really just loves everything about parkour. And last, but definitely not least from that Parkour Over 40 group, is Howard Cosmos Palmer, who's 41 years old, and he's been training for 14 years so far. Every time I watch a video of Howard, I'm left feeling in awe. I wish I had his hops and incredible strength, and he's an amazing athlete regardless of his age. I love his energy and power, and we've talked about getting together sometime and training, hopefully not in the not too far distant future. When Howard reaches something that's beyond his physical limitation, the biggest thing is he knows just to walk away from it. He loves that he can enjoy the awareness and just being able to humble himself and not let the moment get away from him. With mental barriers, this is where he loves to have a little fun with those types of challenges. If he believes he physically can do it, he'll just create smaller versions of it to build up his comfort level, and then once he has his confidence level up, he'll give the challenge a try. So this is where he pushes the boundaries a lot with himself. So getting into parkour, his first challenge was just trying to find the time to get out and train. Now he doesn't get caught up with that and just loves learning what his body and mind can create with movement. His current challenge is just watching himself age as he enjoys the journey. Physical movement is more demanding, so he balances his parkour training with strength and cardio. It gets easier as he becomes more accepting of the unknown. There isn't any one way to do something, and he loves the creative space that parkour allows. This creativity allows him to understand his mind and body even more. Howard keeps doing it at his point in life because he just wants to be one with the movement, and he'll just keep finding new ways to challenge himself. Well, there you have it. I hope you found the video to be a little enlightening and slightly entertaining. I know I'm going to take away a few things to add to my own training process, and hopefully some of you can too. See you guys next time.